Joining us now, Dick Morris, someone who believes he knows what motivated our president to make the exchange. Dick, we welcome you back to America's Forum. Give us your theory on what started this in the first place.
Well, first of all, it is a theory. I don't know, but I believe that this theory is correct. I think it was part of a larger, and is part of a larger negotiation going on either directly or indirectly between the administration and the Taliban to negotiate the circumstances of our departure from Afghanistan. I think the memory of helicopters taking off from the roof of our embassy in Saigon with desperate Vietnamese clinging to the skids of the helicopter to try to hang on as it took off is seared into America's consciousness. And I don't think that Obama wants to repeat that. He left Iraq under the illusion of victory. It's since been fallen apart, but at least it wasn't an embarrassing moment. And he doesn't want that embarrassment in Afghanistan. I believe that he probably is talking to the Taliban about how the U.S. can draw down with dignity, without the Taliban nipping at its heels, without the Taliban going berserk claiming surrender and victory, and without rubbing our face in it. And then once we're gone, they will probably go ahead and take over the country, as I think they'll probably be able to do. And I think that the prisoner swap was part of a gesture of good faith, a gesture that negotiations would result in American concessions. We still have not addressed the issue of what happens to the detainees from the war in Afghanistan when we pull out of Afghanistan. Traditionally, when a war is over, POWs get released, sent back to their native country. In Russia's case, Stalin killed them all, anyone who had surrendered to the Germans, but we don't do that. And the Afghanis just give them their rifle back. And we have not addressed the issue yet of whether we are going to empty Guantanamo when we leave Afghanistan. But that would probably be a major issue that the Taliban would insist on. And the release of these 5 guys may be a gesture of good faith that the United States will move in that direction.
Now, Dick, I want to make sure I understand this. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but again, you are advancing a theory that sounds as follows. This is but a first step in what will be a carefully choreographed situation involving President Obama and the Taliban to move for the ultimate withdrawal and disengagement of American forces in Afghanistan. Does that summarize it?
I'd prefer my wording because we can't predict that there will be a choreographed withdrawal. I believe that Obama probably wants that. And I think that the negotiations with the Taliban over this so-called exchange, in fact, just releasing 5 guys from Guantanamo, is part of his gestures to the Taliban to try to orchestrate what they might call an orderly withdrawal of American forces. As you know, one of the most difficult maneuvers in warfare is to withdraw from a battlefield, one that's still active. You incur the most casualties when that happens because your forces are drawing down and they can't protect one another. They're not there in sufficient quantity. And I would think that both the military and Obama realize that they're withdrawing now from a hot battlefield, in effect surrendering. And we don't want to have the Taliban shooting at us while our people are boarding helicopters. And this may be part of an effort by the Obama administration to demonstrate good faith to the Taliban and in some way try to negotiate a withdrawal that would be what we would characterize as with dignity.
Well, Dick, that seems to be supported in a Washington Post article that was published yesterday, and I'm going to read from the article right here, and it said the White House advisors believe that a successful exchange would not only free Bergdahl, but it would also encourage moderate Taliban members to take an Afghan-led reconciliation process seriously. So this is, in many ways, the Obama administration legitimizing the Taliban here, right?
I don't think that's true. Yeah.
You don't think so?
Yeah,
but
I don't
clearly
think
they
that
need the
this will have the
Taliban to
slightest
participate.
impact on the Taliban. Yeah, and I think that that article was probably a leak from the White House to try to justify it and put it in the context that I think it really is, which is an effort to ask the Taliban to play nice.
Well, let's take a look at some other comments from major newspapers around the country, Dick, from their editorial boards. Three major papers, all taking a cautious tone on this exchange. The New York Times editorial began with these words, and I quote, "It would be extremely cold-hearted not to feel relief that Sergeant Bo Bergdahl is back in American hands after being held captive by the Taliban for nearly 5 years." The editorial goes on to say the deal could help restart talks with the Taliban. The Wall Street Journal, in its editorial, focuses exclusively on Bergdahl without making mention of the Obama White House at all. That editorial instead focuses on the fact that Mr. Bergdahl owes his comrades an account of how and why he left his post. And the aforementioned Washington Post put together an editorial that basically says the swap raises troubling questions, but it praises President Obama for his, quote, unswerving commitment to servicemen. So you see these editorials, Dick. I guess in one sense they're predictable.
Look,
your take on it?
I think that if we put this in the context of the American Revolution, the United States, the colonists, just exchanged General Burgoyne, who we captured, Cornwallis, who we captured, and Generals Howe and Gates, who we didn't capture, the top 4 British commanders. And what we got in return was Benedict Arnold.
Well, you mentioned Benedict Arnold, and it's interesting that the New York Daily News, of all newspapers, offered, I guess, what might be considered an editorial outlier. Their editorial was entitled "Surrender Without Honor." Their editorial board writing that President Obama betrayed the highest obligation of his office, safeguarding national security. Your take on the take of the New York Daily News?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of evidence that he actually had reliable and important intel information for the Taliban on the way the convoy system was organized, how best to blow up a truck, who was on what convoy, what trucks contained what munitions. And there was a report by one of the team leaders of Bergdahl's that after his capture, the attacks became more accurate and more deadly. And the ambushes occurred much more regularly, probably because he was giving that information, whether voluntarily, which I believe, or under torture, which would be a possibility. I think that the fundamental point here is that we've exchanged 5 terrorists who can do us great harm, and we know that at least 1/3 of the releasees from Guantanamo went back into the field against us, in return for somebody who at best was a deserter and at worst was a traitor.
Well, Dick, I wanted to get your comments from some of the Democratic
If I could make one comment about the Mississippi primary.
Sure, Dick, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a runoff now in Mississippi between the Tea Party challenger, Chris McDaniel, and the incumbent Thad Cochran. I have long experience in Mississippi politics. I used to work for Trent Lott and a whole lot of others. I think that it's very likely now that the Tea Party guy, McDaniel, is going to win that because you now have 52% of the state, 51% that voted against renominating Thad Cochran, some for McDaniel and some for this third-party candidate. And in the runoffs, you don't usually have everybody who's voting for the lower-level offices that it may have had primaries. It's just the Senate race. And the people who are going to come out for that are going to be mainly fans of McDaniel, whose side generates more passion. I think that this is an interesting pushback to the obituaries of the Tea Party. This is a seat that can't possibly go Democrat. And the Tea Party, I think, was very effective in defeating one of the most venerable incumbents in the Senate, who, by the way, richly deserves defeat.
So Thad Cochran is done as far as you're concerned. It'll be McDaniel in the runoff, the way you see it. We would be remiss, Dick, if we did not talk about Iowa. Joni Ernst, we got about 30 seconds. It seems the Tea Party and the establishment all got behind Joni Ernst.
She's got a great shot. Yeah, Joni has a tremendous shot at winning. I know her, and she's a terrific candidate. Combines both the farm background and the combat background and a distinguished record in the state Senate. I think that she may well defeat Braley, who demonstrated his contempt for farmers by dismissing Grassley, the other senator, as just being a farmer.
Yeah, that's going to be very dangerous, especially with the Democrat nominee talking about the fact that he's a lawyer. I don't know if that's going to work very well in the general election. As always, Dick, we appreciate your insights and analysis. So what about Dick Morris and his theory of why the president did the prisoner swap? Why don't you tweet us your comments at Newsmax TV, #America's Forum.